There's a truth that's kind of funny, but also kind of embarrassing. There are things you've known about for a whole week. You know they matter. You know they need to get done. You know that if you don't do them, you're going to get wrecked one way or another. And yet somehow, through some kind of dark magic, you still manage to stay weirdly calm. Until there's exactly one day left, and then suddenly, it's like a productivity demon possesses you. You open your laptop like you're defusing a bomb. You make coffee with the intensity of a Greek warrior. You look at the clock, look at the deadline, and tell yourself, all right, time to become a responsible human being. The funny part is, that version of you was always there. It didn't die. It didn't disappear. It just refuses to show up until things get urgent enough. If you've ever stared at a blank Word document for 5 days and then, on the final night, written like Shakespeare on caffeine, this video is for you. And no, I don't think the biggest problem here is that you're lazy. I think the problem is a little worse than that. You may have gotten used to using panic as your start button. I used to think people like this just lacked discipline. Like, adults get things done early. Responsible people don't wait until the last second. If you want to succeed, you need discipline. Sounds great. Sounds motivational. Sounds like something you'd print on a t-shirt. But there's a problem. People like you, and honestly, me too. It's not that we can't get things done. If anything, when things get really bad, you can actually do insanely well. You can write a 2,000-word essay in one night, finish a presentation deck at 2:13 a.m. with eyes that look like two raisins, study half a semester's worth of material in the last 8 hours before an exam. And weirdly enough, sometimes the result isn't even bad. So the problem here isn't that you're incapable. The problem is this. Why do you only seem able to use your abilities when everything is on fire? That's the scary question, because if your brain only works well in emergency mode, then you're not really in control of yourself, you're just waiting to be forced. And living like that is exhausting. And once you see that, the whole problem starts to look different. Because this isn't really about laziness, it's about what your brain decides is urgent. You don't respond to what's important. You respond to what feels urgent. Here's the first thing to understand. Your brain does not prioritize what matters most. Your brain prioritizes what feels most urgent. That's why next week's essay deadline loses to a 15-second Instagram reel. A major project loses to a meaningless text message. 3 hours of studying loses to, let me go find something to eat first. It's not because you're stupid, and it's not because you secretly want to ruin your life. It's because when the deadline is still far away to your brain, it's still just an idea. Something vague. A problem for future me. But your phone? That's the present. That's instant reward. That's dopamine delivered to your door with zero effort. In other words, when the deadline is still far away, your task doesn't lose because it isn't important. It loses because it doesn't feel urgent enough to beat what's right in front of you. Here's a very normal example. You have a presentation due Friday. On Monday, you open your laptop, look at the PowerPoint title, and then close it. On Tuesday, you decide you should do a little more research first. On Wednesday, you start organizing your desk, wiping it down, adjusting the light, picking a deep focus playlist, getting water, going to the bathroom, coming back, and then opening YouTube to watch Love is Blind. So technically, you're procrastinating in a very organized way. You're still circling around the task. You're just not actually stepping into it. But then Thursday night hits, and suddenly your brain lights up like a dashboard full of warning lights. The outline appears. The wording appears. The logic appears. Suddenly you know where to start, what to cut, what to keep, what to say. Not because you somehow became a mature adult in 24 hours, but because at that point, your brain finally gets the signal. Oh, this is real. If I don't do this, I'm screwed. And once the consequences become clear, focus finally shows up. And that leads to the next question. If urgency is what finally wakes your brain up, then what are you actually waiting for all the other times? What you're waiting for isn't motivation, it's pressure. This is the part that makes a lot of people feel a little called out. A lot of people say, I'm waiting until I'm in the mood. I need inspiration. I need the right vibe. No, most of the time, you're not waiting for inspiration. You're waiting until you're scared enough. That sounds harsh, but it's true. When there's one day left before the deadline, you suddenly stop asking, am I in the mood? Do I feel motivated enough? Do I have the right energy for this? No, you just do it. Because at that point, the question is no longer, do I feel like it? It becomes, can I live with the consequences if I don't? And this is why so many people confuse pressure helps me perform with I perform best under pressure. Those are not the same thing. Pressure can pull you out of paralysis. But that does not mean pressure is the ideal environment to live in forever. And this mechanism doesn't only show up with school or work deadlines. It shows up with money too. Think about your credit card payment coming due. You know it's due in a week. And if you're being honest with yourself, right now you don't even know exactly where that money is going to come from. There's no solid plan, no secret stash of money that just fell out of the sky. And yet, somehow, you stay pretty calm. You keep telling yourself, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. It'll probably be fine. But then the final day shows up. Now you start checking every account. Now you start figuring out where you can move money around to cover it. Now you start digging through your contacts and calling people. Now you're trying every possible way to stay afloat. Suddenly your brain is operating like a crisis command center. It's like when someone says, I run fastest when a dog is chasing me. Yeah, sure. But that doesn't mean you should raise a dog whose full-time job is chasing you every morning to optimize your cardio. Stress gives you a very powerful kind of energy. It makes everything sharper. It forces your brain to ignore the random nonsense and lock on to what matters most. But that's borrowed energy. And if it's borrowed energy, you're going to pay interest on it eventually. And a lot of people treat work, school, and even money problems exactly like this. It's not that they don't care. It's that they don't fully feel how real the problem is until the consequences are close enough to touch. And that wouldn't be such a huge problem if it only happened once in a while. But when this pattern keeps saving you, your brain starts learning the wrong lesson. If you always save yourself at the last minute, your brain learns the wrong lesson. This is where it gets really dangerous. Let's say you procrastinate for 6 days. Then on day 7, you go full maniac mode, finish the thing, and submit it on time. Or at the last minute, you somehow find a way to stay afloat and make your credit card payment on time. You exhale. Everything is fine. Sounds like a happy ending. But the thing that just got reinforced in your brain is not next time I should start earlier or next time I should be smarter with money. The thing that gets reinforced is this. See, it all worked out. As long as I wait until it's urgent enough, I'll figure something out. And just like that, you accidentally train yourself to depend on crisis. You stop trusting early action. You start trusting your ability to save yourself at the last minute. Sounds cool. But it's actually exhausting. Because now, every time something important comes up, you don't just have to do the thing. You have to go through the entire cycle again. Avoidance to guilt, to panic, to sprinting to burnout, to promising yourself you'll change to repeat. It's like only knowing how to drive once your gas tank is almost empty. You still get where you're going, but the whole way there feels like a heart attack. And the worst part is, over time, you start making this part of your identity. You start saying things like, I'm just the kind of person who needs pressure to get things done. I do my best work at the last minute. I'm used to it. It sounds like personality, but a lot of the time, it's just a nervous system habit repeated for too long. It's not the real you. It's just a way of operating that you've used so often it starts to feel like your nature. And after a while, the biggest cost isn't even the stress. It's what this does to the way you see yourself. The cost of living like this isn't just stress or wasted time. It slowly destroys your self-respect. A lot of people think procrastination just wastes time or slows you down. I don't think that's the real damage. I think the worst part is that it makes you lose trust in yourself. Because you know you can do well. You've seen that version of yourself already. The version that sits down and gets it done. Clear mind, fast speed, clean execution. You know that version is real, but you can't summon that version of yourself whenever you want. It only shows up when life has a knife to your throat. And that feels awful. It makes you see yourself as someone who has potential and is also deeply unreliable. You say, I'll do it tomorrow. And even you don't believe that sentence. That's why this isn't just a productivity problem. It's a relationship between you and yourself. Every time you push something to the final minute, you're not just delaying the task, you're sending yourself a message. I only take action when I'm cornered. Repeat that message often enough, and eventually you start believing it. And once you believe you only function under pressure, You'll unconsciously keep living in ways that make pressure show up over and over again. So if that's the trap, the real question is, how do you get out of it without waiting for another crisis to save you? The way out is not becoming a more disciplined person. The way out is making it less necessary to need a crisis just to start. This is the most important part because I don't want this video to just end at, wow, that's so me. You do not need another video that makes you feel seen and then leaves you there. You need something useful. What you do not need is to become some disciplined saint who wakes up at 5 a.m., drinks warm lemon water, meditates for 20 minutes, and then jumps straight into deep work like a robot. Relax. The goal is not to turn you into a walking LinkedIn post. The goal is this: stop depending on panic to begin. And to do that, you need to understand one thing. You do not need to do the entire task. You need to get past the friction of starting. So instead of setting goals like, today I have to finish the whole thing, I have to finish the entire project, I need to be better with money, replace them with goals your brain can't argue with. I just need to write the first 3 lines. I just need to sit with this for 10 minutes. I just need to make a terrible outline. I just need to write down where my money went this month. It sounds small. It doesn't sound impressive. It doesn't sound inspiring. But it works. Because your problem usually isn't continuing. Your problem is starting. Here's a very practical example. If you need to work on a presentation, don't set the goal as finish 15 slides tonight. Set the goal as open PowerPoint. Write the title for slide 1, type out 3 main points, set a 10-minute timer. That's it. Because once you're in motion, your brain usually stops resisting so hard. But before you start, your brain will pull every trick in the book, like a toddler refusing to take a bath. And one more thing, don't let the deadline be the only thing with a shape. If the real deadline is Friday, create a visible deadline on Wednesday, not just in your head. Write it down. Make it specific. Make it clear. Give it checkpoints. For example, Wednesday at 8 p.m., finish the outline. Thursday at 2 p.m., finish the first draft. Thursday at 9 p.m., final edits. Why does this help? Because you're bringing the urgency closer, but at a level that doesn't throw you into panic. You're creating clean urgency instead of waiting for toxic urgency. And finally, remove the friction between thinking about the task and starting the task. If you want to study, the material should already be open. If you want to write, the file should already be in front of you. If you want to work, your phone needs to be out of reach. Don't expect willpower to beat an environment that was literally designed to distract you. Willpower is valuable, but honestly, it's no match for TikTok. And once you understand that, the whole point of this video becomes pretty simple. If you only really start working when there's 1 day left, I don't think you're lazy. I think you've repeated one pattern for so long that it became normal. When everything is still quiet, you feel vague. That vagueness makes you procrastinate. Procrastination creates guilt. Guilt builds into anxiety. Anxiety grows into panic. And panic finally turns into action. The problem is, that pattern works just well enough that you never fully abandon it. But it also works badly enough that you constantly feel like you're living below your actual potential. You do not need to get better at handling pressure. You need to learn how to start before pressure becomes a threat. Because the moment you no longer need panic to open the file, no longer need fear just to sit down, no longer need a small crisis to do the thing you already know matters, that is the moment you truly take back control of your brain. And honestly, that's what real discipline is. Not working like a maniac on the final night, but being able to begin while everything is still quiet. So I'm curious. What's one thing you always leave until the last minute? Let me know in the comments. And if you got something out of this, subscribe to Vex Oriss. It really helps the channel and it helps me keep making more videos like this.